Welcome, everybody. Oh, I'm really happy to be here today to introduce a good friend of mine, Nicola Amadora. And I have known Nicola for quite some time. In fact, we each have a daughter that is the same age that went to a Waldorf school together and were playmates when she was living here on the land that I'm living on, which is the unceded land of the Amomutsa tribal band, which is called Santa Cruz right now. But she was here and also was part of a school program that I had developed, and she taught some parenting classes. So what I love about Nicola is that not only is she a wonderful spiritual teacher and therapist, that she is a mother and she brings this with her and it informs her work. And she's also trained as a Hakomi therapist, which is something else that we share. And I love it when there's a capacity to combine wisdom teachings, real life, and therapeutic processes, as well as the divine feminine, which is a very strong part of her work. And we're going to hear quite a bit about that today. Welcome, Nicola.
Oh, Prajna, thank you and for having me here. I'm really
Oh,
looking forward
yeah, I've been
to
looking
have
forward to this. So I said a little bit about you as far as your you know, training goes. Do you want to add anything to that in the start?
not so important. Maybe just to add, I have a doctor in psychology, but also I'm like you, trained, been teaching in a non-dual spiritual wisdom.
Yeah, so do you want to say anything else about that before I begin my questions?
Well, what I want to say is that it's really striking how similar what overlaps for us, is like the transpersonal psychology that I have as well, and then the non-dual stream and the feminine stream, and the Dharma teaching as well. It's like these are the things that I trained long time ago in that and taking
Yes.
the fresh water from it to pour it
Yes.
out. So it's a real joy to be here with you, Prajna.
Mm.
And I love that you're a parent too. So there is a passion that we share.
Yes. Yes. The parenting passion, the wisdom of no escape there when you get to be a parent. Such a humbling process.
Yep, I would say it's the path of radical love, and it's not the pleasant one always.
Yes, but such a worthwhile one because you can't walk away from your children, although some people do. And some people feel that it's actually even necessary as part of the spiritual journey. So we can speak more about that after. I'm kind of gonna, I want to kind of take us through a conversation where we can build upon certain topics. And it just may go anywhere. We'll see. But just let's hear a little bit about your beginning life, what it was like for you to grow up in a female body in the particular culture that you were in, which was Germany. And there was probably quite a bit going on at that time with the history of Germany and perhaps trauma and those kinds of things. So maybe say a little bit about that and how your spiritual journey got started.
Well, it's interesting that I landed in Germany because it was at that time, it was the time when my parents were the generation that built up the physical world again in Germany. Yeah? It's like after the war. And the war was pretty devastating from the Hitler time, of course. And then I came in, 20 years later after the war had ended. However, I felt like my generation was the generation that was taking on the emotional burden to heal that
Yeah.
from our country.
Mhm.
And the talking, about the female being born in a female body at that time, this at that time there was not much consciousness
Mm.
around the feminine, the softness, the connectedness, the relational. It was all still about like, we're going to survive, we're going to build up a new world, and the girls be pleasing. And
Mm,
that was strong. And for me, and it was not so much like a body consciousness, like, that you get educated about how your menstruation works and how the first blood comes. Nobody talks about it. Was Nobody was talking about it, and nobody celebrated it. So I
mhm,
was pretty much on my own with that.
mhm,
But the thing from my childhood was more marked by heavy abuse.
mm, mhm.
And as a child, I learned to survive by hiding
Yeah.
and by pleasing. And that's a classic for the feminine anyway, but
Uh-huh.
it was
By hiding and by what?
pleasing, being
Pleasing.
very, very
Yes.
a nice girl.
Mhm.
Yeah. It's a survival strategy. And I had to use that
Uh-huh.
in because I was pretty much beaten every day.
Mm,
So I had, I would call, I really don't want to go into details about
mm,
my child, but
mhm.
just to say it was the childhood from hell.
Yeah. In my particular generation, it was the same thing. The body wasn't really, especially in a Catholic upbringing, you don't talk about the body, you hide the body. And you also in a female body are quite pleasing. And then religiously you're excluded. So and there was other things going on around alcoholism. So I understand and relate to that well. So we have that. And I'm sure many women people do. So, what's the interesting thing is that you've come so far in your journey. And what is it that really brought you onto the spiritual path? Like, kind of, how did you pull yourself up from that?
Yeah, that's a good one. I think when you get so heavily abused and sit in hell, there's only three choices. You either kill yourself, you go crazy, or you wake up.
Yeah.
And whatever that was in my soul, it started working very, very early already, where I was looking for what true love is. I wanted to find it. It was almost like an obsession already as a child. And so I spent a lot of time in nature. And that's where I discovered a complete magical connection
Mm,
with the animals and the plants. And then when I was 14, I was determined to find a teacher, somebody who could show me the way to true love, because
mm,
I knew there was nothing in my childhood nor in my upbringing, and it was like it was empty, and I didn't have. There was not even a religion. So
mm,
I spent a lot of time on graveyards and in the woods. I was kind of like, if you at that time people would have looked at me, they would have said, "She's kind of crazy. This is a very strange person. She talks with trees and animals."
mm.
Um, and then when
I
I was
just want to say, when I hear you say that, I can feel, I mean, as soon as you shifted to speaking about the trees and the animals and nature, I just feel this love and softening in your body, like just already, like how you found nature or it found you, but there's already like there's just a comfort that seems to shift in the conversation when we
yeah,
when we leave something that is so difficult. So to me that I feel an embodiment of that here.
yeah, I can sense it when you speak into it. That's beautiful. I can feel it even more coming alive right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's definitely, yeah, it's definitely very present to this day in this moment also.
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
I, I, so, I feel also excited to share this piece where I sense there's places in nature that are that are not even obvious to the eye, and yet they're sacred, strong power places. I
Mm-hmm.
started finding and little temples and places that I felt like there's such an energy there
Mm-hmm.
that is for me holy, sacred, powerful, can't put to words. Yeah.
Yeah, beautiful.
And when I was, when I was 14, that's when I started packing my bags, and then I went to India and spent time in ashrams and monasteries with the Tibetans, and also with a guru, and but it was all male at that
Mm.
time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. So would you say that something about that maybe gave you a place to go? At least maybe that was part of the hiding, because I did that too. I spent a lot of time in ashrams, and in retrospect, when I look back, that was also part of my hiding. It was a place where I could, have some sense of safety and begin to investigate a little bit more about who I am.
I think as part of it, just like you, part of it was really there was a safe and sacred place to hide.
Mm-hmm.
And in this, I was completely absorbed in spiritual practices. 10 hours a day was nothing for me at some point.
Mm-hmm.
I had, but there was a way where I could feel when I look back, just like you said, um, I wasn't fully landing on Earth. I actually was like getting into these incredible experiences, and at the same time, half of my body, the lower part, I did not, I did not come in there. It was
Mm-hmm.
all up here, you know, and it
Yes.
was safe.
Yes. So relatable. So what was the transition point for you that you can remember where you started to come more in and down and making contact with your body, with the base of the body, and with the feminine, because she is, she's there in the base and the pelvis and the yoni in the deep ground. So did you have any particular experience that happened, or was it a gradual descending?
It was both ways. I had some outstanding experiences that just blew me off. That just blew me open, basically. But there was also a gradual, which was when I came back, I completely knew I have to engage in therapy. I have to do a lot of therapy with the level of abuse I had. So I
Yes.
did trauma work already when I was 18, because it was pretty severe.
Mm,
And and having such high level spiritual experiences just brought up the trauma so much stronger. So I could feel that I'm a half person. I wasn't really, I couldn't even, with my consciousness, I couldn't even get down into my belly in the beginning.
yeah.
And I certainly couldn't feel my feet. I mean, I did yoga and what the heck, but it was just physical.
Mm,
And so that was the gradual part. The more I worked with my trauma, the easier it was to feel a bit more safer in my body and to land more on planet Earth.
mm,
Really did it. There was two things that did it. I mean, one was really giving birth to my daughter.
mhm.
That helped to come down.
Yes.
But the other part was like spending a lot of time in a dark cave with the feminine, and how the feminine appeared to me and what happened in there is was for me unprecedented and turned my whole spirituality upside down, and
Mm,
it completely knocked me onto the ground, into my body, in a way that I had never even imagined it could be possible.
oh, uh-huh. Yeah. So did that happen? Was that going on around the same time as your pregnancy and giving birth, or was that
No, that was after,
after?
actually. That
Okay.
was,
Uh-huh.
yeah.
So the pregnancy, giving birth was kind of like a gateway, you could say, an
Yeah.
initiation. I know for me it was huge, huge initiation. You know,
Yep.
just like, oh, there it's wordless. And then also too, the gift of having a newborn child, to for me it was also the remembering of innocence, this this purity and innocence of our birthright that we're all born with. And something about that just touched and opened more in my being and in the heart, that remembering to hold that dear for myself and for everyone, to know that, and then conditioning gets layered on, you know, and there's the layering of conditioning, and to be able to help me to see people beyond their conditioning, past that. Yeah. And my in my own too, you know. She just like became a mirror.
Yeah, the same, the
Yeah.
same. That reflection of innocence, yes, what you experienced, and this deeper opening, this flowering of your essence coming through by being with your little ones.
Mm.
Me,
And
it
what I
was
remember about your daughter and mine is they were both very playful. Like what was lovely too, because mentioning your childhood, which wasn't fun, then the children can also teach us how to play again.
well, yes, she taught me how to play again, and I had never played before. And so, because for me, it was all my childhood was a near survival, basically. That was my
Yes.
But what it also gave me, and I had found that already, that deep taste of love, of pure love. I'd
Hmm.
already found that in myself and the ashrams and all that through my spiritual practice. But what happened with my daughter was for me the sense of, oh my God, here is my golden opportunity to live true love, whatever, in whatever situation. And
Mm-hmm.
then it, she became my teacher.
Hmm.
She became my, I don't want to put this on my child to say she became my guru, but she, in this journey, became my path, part of my path of recognizing that it's not just about tasting the divine, seeing the divine, or experiencing true love. It's about, it only shows in the actual living of it. That's how it becomes embodied and manifest. And I was,
Hmm.
he was, and this is probably for you most true too, I feel, is the sense of when you brought to the limits.
Yeah.
You get, I get up for I don't know how many times a night, but
Hmm.
to take it as my spiritual practice, as
Hmm.
my practice to to love itself.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I kind of have come to refer to it over the years because I still have two of my children with me, as you know. They're 24, but they're fully dependent on me for their care. But I think of it even before this conversation. I got a little delayed because, one of my girls needed something. But like when it transformed itself into that being the Dharma bell, like
That's
okay, that's I'm being called to walk what I talk.
that's it.
It's like playing the role of a teacher or,
Yep,
a guide, a mentor, a friend in this way. Like, okay, am I showing up for my life as it is? Like, am I really, walking my talk? It's easy to
that's
say these things.
oh, it's very easy, and you can take the teacher hat off when you go home, and even when you're with a partner, you can with friends, you can all look really good and it's all fine. But I felt like, wow, this is the true training, the Dharma bell, as you say.
Mm-hmm.
When the next cry comes and the next pooping in the diapers and the sleepless nights or the hurt that appears, can I show up present even when I
Mm-hmm.
don't feel like
Yeah.
love her, even if I don't feel loving in this moment? Can
Mm-hmm.
I reach deeper than my own mind or feelings at that moment and my own needs? And
Mm-hmm.
I felt like that is the true, that is the, it's like the fire, the fire of love.
Mm-hmm.
Um, or it
Yeah.
burns through so that only the real remains. And I could feel sometimes how I fell short, and
Yeah.
I could feel how I was like, oh my God, here's the area that where I check out myself. How can I
Mhm.
check in and be there with her? And she would always feel it. That was the
Mm.
annoying part.
Uh-huh. Yeah, yeah. It doesn't let you get away with anything.
No. And
Yeah.
in this, when I surrendered that this is God's grace, this
Mm-hmm.
is this is the divine, this is love's way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And I think for me too, and I think yourself, like what you're saying, is what I also love about parenting in a way is being a path, like the Dharma bell is being rung and can I show up, is there isn't any perfection in it. And
Mhm.
often in the spiritual marketplace, there is an image and a posturing and a holding of this place of perfection that we arrive at, and there is this persona that can be presented, and also the sense of being finished. And,
Yeah,
there's no
a lot.
completion and there's no perfection in any of it. And I think that this isn't something that gets spoken about too often and it needs to be heard and said because parent, life is challenging. We're all right now in the midst of heavy, heavy, heavy challenge. You could say it's a global dark night, and sacrifices are being made, loss is happening, there's illness, there's death, there's all of this challenge, and the life of a parent is like that ongoingly. But then I think also in a bigger way of what I recognize, because I've been a single parent for a very long time, and I think you were as well for pretty early on. And sometimes it takes a while to get yourself into a position of even being able to afford a lifestyle. So, for a while there, I was considered and still am because I have special needs children in a marginalized group. But there are many marginalized groups, and they're being impacted the most. And I think it's a disservice to put this this oh God, what do you want to call it? The teaching of perfection, where it doesn't
Yeah.
give space for the initiation of the dark nights.
And
And
I
like you
think
said, going into your cave, and
right.
so what I would like to speak about with you, because I know you have a lot of good information on this, is I really feel we're in a place of not holding ourselves as victims, but really coming into solutions, the solutions. And also this idea of a guru is really the patriarchal way of teaching is really dismantling, and it's good time for that to happen. But what I love about the feminine and what you bring is that we join more in a circle. There isn't this ranking, but we're more about linking. And
Yeah,
I'd say that
exactly.
here in our humanity right now, it is about linking and being more like the mother, the mother who can hold everything and not expect any one piece to have to be a particular way. That.
Well, when you say, the linking, that is beautiful, and that's what the mother does, and also what I experienced, the true mother, the mother of all. Like, she holds her children as they are, not perfect. And this is this what you spoke to in the spiritual scene. There's often this sense of like perfection and ultimate enlightenment is reached. And I think it's a lie, basically. And it's also devoid of love. Because
Mhm,
love says, I love you as you are. I
mhm,
mean, and for me, it was like that's where I had to come to, also towards myself and also with my daughter, when there were places where I just was like completely ragged, you know, and we're, that love is right there in that place. And so I was like feeling when you speak about the feminine, then this patriarchal model of the ultimate, ladder is reached, we're on top, and now we're all white and beautiful and zen, and we don't experience any more wild emotions. Well, guess what? What the feminine for me did, the divine, more than the divine mother, she just smacked the whole thing down where I was also striving towards, because that was the teaching and the training I'd gotten. And it helped to a certain degree and be really disciplined and all that. And German, being German is very good for discipline.
Uh-huh.
And it's like, but there was this place where she came into my life, and it was like a roar. And it was like she broke every single rule and way of how I learned what spiritual enlightenment, so called, is. Everything went just completely upside down, especially when I had this big, experience, not just through my daughter, but then later in the cave, and that was where it just turned it upside down. And I realized, oh my God, I
Mm,
had it. It was just one way. I learned, take the best and leave the rest.
mm-hmm. Yes. Oh, well said. Yeah, it reminds me like even well, I have been fortunate to have some really good female teachers. My first teacher, Eunice, was from Manhattan, and she was this self-made, police Zen woman. Like, she was rugged and beautiful, and she could be, all these things all at once, a mother, and very, very discerning and sharp, like at the,
Mhm.
but at the same time incredibly soft,
That's
and
it.
just
Mhm.
so, oh, and I didn't realize till many years later what she died suddenly, unexpectedly. I had her for 5 years, and she had come to visit me, and then died 3 days later. And I remember the grief that I had over that. And then I was able to recognize the simplicity of what she was offering to me. You know, not this like course of I don't know, like I can so not relate to these really difficult these kind of teachings that offer all these different levels. I just have a hard time with that, because it's really just like, like you said, just let everything collapse, and meeting, just it's a continuous meeting and meeting and meeting. So I didn't get that until after. But what I wanted to say is, I still was initiated into several more dark nights after that. Like, I felt like her death was a dark night for me. I felt like I lost my mother. She was really like a mother to me. And later I met Adyashanti. And I remember I would go on retreats, and I would often have downloads in the form of pictures, rather than, and still now I get a lot of intuitive, like, downloads of information, and I don't always have words for it, but so I make drawings and pictures. And I remember there was a period of time where I just kept drawing mountains. And then one time I put like this flag at the top of the mountain, was like, okay, I have arrived. And then there were arrows going down with pictures of tombstones, it going down, and it was like, okay, now here, okay, so you think you've arrived, all right, well, now you have to go down here and unpack the tombstones, lift all those rocks up, all those places that haven't been met yet in humanity, meeting the human condition, and how that really never ends. It just never ends.
And that's what I think is often left out in the spiritual field of to meet our humanity and that what is utterly human. And sometimes I feel like when you know when you describe your experience and this on the mountaintop, it's like this hope there will be a mountaintop and forever I will be blissful. And that's such a disservice to people, you know, because it's more like what my experience also is like going down from the mountain and being able to touch those tombstones as you describe with that presence from that love and
Uh,
meeting even the most horrendous places being liberated for me
mhm,
means literally you can walk through hell with love and touch everything, liberate, you know, liberate everything with that touch and
yeah,
that kiss of the
yeah.
beloved.
Uh-huh.
And that wasn't shown to me until, you know, when I was in that deep cave, because I kept experiencing like she just kept calling me. And what I experienced on my path was it didn't quite make sense of what I had read. You know, I had all my teachers, and they were brilliant teachers, amazing true masters. But there was something that called me to the wild, and
Mm,
it was the wilderness. It was the bare wilderness when I was, you know, with the mountain lions and the snakes, all, and then in the cave. Where finally, when I said, you know, I laid myself there and I said, I will not leave this cave until you completely take me.
mm,
It's
mhm. Yeah.
fasted, and I just was in this dark cave, and it was like she was. I felt like she was stripping layers upon layers, and I realized, oh my God, these are layers upon layers of human suffering, and
Mhm,
not just my own. And it wasn't about letting it go. It was about wanted to touch it all. She wanted
mhm,
to taste it all. She wanted to love it all.
mhm,
And at some point, it just took me in complete rapture. And
mm,
I was really, oh my God, it comes from down below that power. It
mm,
rose up through me, took my body, and just went through me in complete wild ecstasy.
mm,
And it was right there and then that I not just conceptually, I feel everything is truly one, and that she is even in the most hell realms.
mhm,
It is
mhm.
this kiss of complete and utter love that can reach through any shit you might be going through.
Yes. Oh, and
Radical love.
radical love. Yes. And what you're saying, and in that the part of the journey, like to really have your heart cracked open and have the awakening of the mind, you know, where the identity is not held onto like that construct, the social construct, the conditioned construct, the identity. You know, for me too, that happened first, and the heart opened, and then it was this like full ground. Like I kind of talk of it now as the transcendent ground, where she just eats up everything. You know, because really, truly, you know, if you get that you're not separate, that there isn't really a person here, an identity that can be located, you know, it's an unlocatable presence, and in that everything is included. So it really takes us, and this is where I feel like spirituality, as it is maturing and evolving, it does take you to this wider spectrum of being able to hold and meet all of humanity as your brother, as your sister, as your mother, as your father, as this truly being in it all together. And it isn't about holding yourself in even like, even for me these days, it's I don't even, you know, call myself a teacher. It's kind of like that that role is so, there's a perception of that role that I don't feel you know, I can't fit in it. You know, what's happening here is the
Beyond
ground is opened up in such a way that um to follow, especially as you know, in non-dual spirituality, so many of key figures that take center stage are men. And I don't have it, I'm not dissing that, but
Right.
but they're holding them. There's kind of this guru thing where, okay, the teacher has something that I don't have, and is going, I'm going to hang out here long enough and do all this service and, bow at the feet, and, something is going to happen for me. And there are some females that hold that up too. And you also see that kind of in different cults, where there there is you can be asked to leave, like if you challenge the teacher,
Oh,
or
that
if you question if you question
a lot. It happens a lot because
yeah.
it's like the student suddenly is like unseating the teacher, and that be allowed. And I think it's such an old model. And yet, the feminine is, I think, is also needing to ripen into that. No, the teacher thing is just a role. It's like it's just a mantle and it's valuable and all that. However, it's like, what is a true teacher? If you really what I felt like a true teacher for me is like someone who can actually ignite your fire, so you feel your wisdom is coming forth. You
Yes.
your
Mhm.
fire is coming forth. And I did not want to teach because I was in the busyness of hiding my whole this whole world. But I was asked by two female, I would say, that I regard highly as master teachers, and they asked me to teach, and I was like, that is very uncomfortable for me. I did not want to do it. And then I realized, you know what? It's just about just getting to the core, seeing through, and waking it up in somebody, or tickling it up, or kissing it awake.
Mhm.
That wisdom, that love in another person, or holding them like the mother does with their
Yes.
trauma. So that ultimately, it's just a name, teacher. But however, there is, I think, for some of us, we are called because we've been trained.
Yes. Hmm.
But I
Yes.
don't want myself better. It's like, well, I have a job like the handyman has a job. Is my job better? No, the handyman needed too. If your plumbing goes out, it's not very comfortable to sit in
Yes.
your house.
Yes. Yes. Well, I had the same experience too with Adi Shanti. It's like you're not going to grow any further, in my shadow. And always what I loved about, I consider him a very main teacher of myself, but also
Absolutely.
in the for myself, what I feel about what is a good teacher is, just like we were speaking about our children before, they mirror
Mhm.
back to you what you already know inside. It's like this mirror. You can be a mirror to somebody else and show them, just like mirror back. Anyway, that's the way that it gets played here, often. And 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 it and it welcomes everything to the circle. There isn't
Yeah.
a
And
you know
I think,
there's so much bypass that can happen in the realm of transcendence, but to
yes.
really like let the human creature be met, all aspects of that creature, specifically trauma. And also, I think a good teacher too is one who knows their limitation. If there's an
Yeah.
area of expertise that they're not trained in, to not take that on, to refer it out.
Yeah, and that's the humility and the integrity. And when we look at it, for me at least, that my parenting actually, well, it humbled me quite a bit, and it was good because I could feel um, that I have to live what I talk first before I pass it on. If
Hmm.
I don't live it, and it doesn't mean perfect, but I have to walk this thing through first, then actually there's a living transmission that happens.
Hmm.
And that's how the feminine actually teaches,
Hmm.
and is we're teaching through the living transmission.
Hmm.
And that doesn't happen just because you have an awakening experience. That
Hmm.
happens because you lived in the muck of it. You lift your love, your compassion, you turn back to it. And for me, for me, there's a lot about to be said that a teacher, for me at least, this is for me really important to have integrity.
Mm.
Like, that there's certain areas. Well, guess what? If you ask me about driving, fixing a car, sorry, I don't know.
Mm.
You know,
Yes.
or I mean, it's simple that I have seen sometimes with some teachers where it's like they answer questions about parenting, but they haven't raised a child.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Just because you're a spiritual teacher doesn't mean you have to know everything. No.
Yeah, no, you're not a walking library. Yeah, it's different. It's this lived experience. It's beautiful. Yeah. And also too this descending into the ground. I mean, there's such a transmission in that, the capacity for a person to be anchored and rooted and grounded, in their own experience. I mean, that the transmission of that, for me anyways, there's nothing more powerful, because that in itself is like whatever degree of awakening a person has, or knowledge of who they actually truly are, or the softening in the heart, all of that, like being soft in the front and strong and sturdy in the back, if it isn't rooted and anchored, if it isn't like really grounded, that
Yes.
they're still, and that's part of the process too, is
Yes.
what I love about getting grounded, is that's when the deepest traumas can really open, and the nervous system can be met from the ground up to really harmonize and balance, and where the energies of the yin and the yang get to also come into balance. I really feel that the feminine, in my experience anyways, is ignited from the ground up, like really through the pelvis. Like for me, my sacred, all the parts of my body that have the juice and feel alive and engaged and youthful, really has come through, well, I had to, actually for me to really top it off, is plant medicine has been very helpful, because I had huge trauma from the birth of my twins, where I at one time felt really open in the base of my body, but after that trauma, the hospital takeover and having a C-section, everything shut down. It just went numb and closed off. But then I came to her. I was called to work with medicine in the jungle. And wow, that just broke me open. And I don't even have any scar anymore, just like there. And I came back into the base of my body. And, prior to then, I was. I was running on hormones for a while. It's just hormonic engagement, in a sense of coming into that survival place again, which reminded me of what my life was like when I was much younger, and the nervous system couldn't really calm.
Oh,
And I
yeah.
had strong realizations up to that point. So it was really interesting to me to find myself in so much messiness once again. And,
Well,
and I don't know why I said that, but I'm kind of glad I did, because I think it is another part of the journey of not being finished, where you never know what life will present.
well, I experienced exactly this. Is like what you do, what you went through. You went deeper and into the awakening, and then more came up. And it seems like, especially, there's like layer upon layer that wants to be liberated. And for me, it's the same. It's like, for me, it comes all from the deep below and rises up. And it's like she rises up all the way. It's the kundalini, rising up and clearing out all the passageways, all the traumas. But then I felt like it's clearing out, it's bringing up the traumas of humanity, it's bringing up the trauma of the feminine, the endless oppression. And
Mhm.
that my body became literally, that's what I feel to say, it becomes it's a vehicle now of the the ancient power, this living, it's completely and utterly and juicy alive. That's like, that just moves through and it just absorbs, it transmutes, it heals, it brings up whatever trauma there is. I'm like, I can't even count it anymore.
Mm.
But it
Yeah.
turns everything from the poison into nectar all
Mhm.
the time. And
Mm.
I feel like that's what, when you talk about the dark night of the soul, in some ways, this is the sacrifice. And I don't mean that in a negative way, I mean that
Right.
actually in a positive way, because sacrifice means the offering. That's what we do as parents, but that's what the feminine does. That's
Mhm.
what the earth does. She's
Mhm.
giving the divine complete offering of herself, not
Mhm. Mhm.
abusive, you know, way, but in a very unhealthy, very healthy way. Is this,
Yes.
my
Yeah.
life is a sacrifice of love.
Yes. Yes. And I feel too, Nicola, when you're saying that, I can really feel your passion and how alive that is for you. And I feel how so much of that is also because you have received yourself. It's like that giving happens as a sacrifice, and it really feels and can be received from another, the collective, as we're speaking. This is not personal, it's collective. Is that we, you, I, she has received herself. And if she hasn't gone through that dismantling that cave, you know,
Yeah.
and emptied herself and is willing to continue to die, and I don't mean dying in a negative way, as you know. It's the dying to this great, great love, that sacrifice is a receiving in the same way. Like when you give something for your child, it doesn't feel like you're losing anything, you're not really giving anything.
Yes.
It's the, like they say in the indigenous traditions, in the pakakuna is ani, which means to be in sacred reciprocity, and that's really what is happening. And it's what's happening. So you're not, so your vessel, this holy body, rather than being depleted, is constantly being replenished in the offering of love.
I can feel it when you're speaking right now, and you lift your hand. It's like that. There she is. There you are. That's beautiful, flowing, the replenishment juice that's flowing in you right now. Yeah,
Mhm.
it's right there. And anybody who's watching us, I can, they might taste it. Yeah.
Mhm.
Because
Yeah.
it comes through the screen even. I can feel it in my body right now. And I think that's a force to that can restore our entire world.
Mhm.
It's the resurrection in some ways. It's like
Oh
that.
yeah. Mhm. Yeah. Yeah.
Me, there is a holiness in there, and
Mhm.
as we carry that also in our relating, uh,
Mhm.
it's just brings us together.
Yeah, beautiful. And I feel you so much. And this is what the hunger is of humanity, and my call to have conversations with women is really is this. It's this tasting, this offering that we have for each other, so that we're in this transition that we're all in. We're in a huge transition, and we can be in it in a way that is sustainable.
Yeah,
Oh,
and
and
it's empowering. And I can feel, my passion like you is like, yeah, I work with a lot of women, and to bring to teach from that feminine, but also to empower more and more that it's alive, it can come through. But the main thing for me is also like, my passion is really about, well, what called living connection, that hunger for true love, not in the Hollywood sense, but in the the living water, the living juice, the blood
Yeah.
that restores our land, that shows, that gives us new ways how we can tend to this earth to create better societies. It's like, for me, it's like that's the answer to actually catapult, help us to catapult into the great turning that we so need.
Yes. Yes, and the embodiment, that she offers, when you really follow the call of her in the body that isn't transcendent and that isn't hierarchical and it isn't something the patriarchy teaches, where you really come into the feminine and embody, her from the ground. It is
Yeah,
very similar to what's quite natural in my experience of the indigenous people who are still connected to their land. And what you notice, and I've noticed and I hear because I'm pay attention, is that when your land is taken from you, it's almost like your body is taken, because their their embodiment is their connection to the land, the living land is alive. And I so love this and so want to engage more with, I do train with indigenous people, but even more so because this is part of the solution
it
to
is.
climate change, to everything that is happening right now.
Because we won't care until we feel connected. It just is. And the sense of separation that, I live with the indigenous people too and train with the shamans, but I can sense that all of us in some way or another have a sense of separation. Whether your land is taken, whether your body is raped, whether you had abuse, we all have that rift inside that it's almost like, I feel it needs to be met, this deep, deep sense of separation
Hmm.
from our love that
Hmm.
says, yeah, this
Hmm.
too
Yeah,
needs to,
yeah,
needs
yeah,
to,
yeah.
yeah.
And so let's move to how this happens for you, what you're offering, and whether it be through ritual or ceremony or satsang or meeting. I know right now we're all online, and there's a huge learning in that, to
Yeah.
and the connecting happens. Well, for me, a lot of my work is through ritual and ceremony and retreat. So it's been a real shifting to, be online. And I want to be on the land with people. That's the Earth Temple in Spain, You're near there. You're in Portugal now. So so if people want to connect with you, what are you offering now, Nicola?
So, I do retreats online, I do satsangs online, I do online courses, and I do private sessions, therapeutic sessions, and I also teach. It's called Transforming Lives Training for those who are teaching, for those who are therapists, and to train people how to actually guide people really, really well with,
Mm,
you know, trauma and awakening, but also how to guide into a new era for all of us.
yeah.
And the main thing is I do a lot of retreats, even online, and courses. So where we go really, we can go deep. I have changed. I had to change just like you to
Hmm.
do it online. There's something to it when we see each other in big groups in person.
Hmm.
But it's it happens. The transmission happens, the teaching happens, and it's just a little bit readjustment. But I feel like that's I'm glad we have it online. So that's what I do. I work with groups and individuals, and I do the relating called the Fire of True Connection and teach the resonance relating.
Uh,
I've taught total different way of relating with each other.
I love that title, Fire of True Relating.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, well, beautiful. And in the notes, I'll put your website and people can connect to you that way. And yeah, I just want to say the one thing that I really miss, just because I am such a full-on mom, with my daughters here, and it's kind of like I run a little mini corporation just with helpers and navigating all the different changes that happen within agency and so on and so forth. But being home for, gosh, it's almost a year of not being able to travel is something has shifted for me in seeing that still, like, I would use my retreats, my work, going away is my vacation time, really. And I'd be, what I love about it is I could be totally full on with how I this passion lives here, how it's informed by my life with my family, life as it is, and then how this passion gets to ignite itself on retreat and meetings without the external distractions that I would have in my typical ordinary home life. So what I have found in being, stopped fully home for a year is that if I didn't get to travel again, it would be okay. Whereas before I was thinking I needed that. It was like my respite. But an adjustment has happened. And it hasn't been an easy adjustment this year, to like not being able to go out the door and just being right here. And so I have this, I'm grateful for that. And I know traveling will still happen eventually, but a
yeah.
deeper integration, has
Mm.
happened, just a deeper integration. And
Where you
I've been
don't,
writing.
yes,
So
where you don't need that separation, where it's like you don't need a separate retreat from life in order to feel connected. It's
yeah,
like in life, and that's really, embodiment for me.
yes.
That's what you're describing, and I
Yeah, and
used
it's
to have.
nice when you can have a like a, something to kind of gauge yourself up against, because sometimes if you're just in living on your own, you don't
Well,
always
you
have
don't.
that kind of family thing to bump up against. But those who have young children, or which many people do, and all different partners and these kinds of things, but when you're in the mix of it all and you get to see, oh wow, that doesn't, hey, it's really just fine here, this is
Yeah,
groovy. Good. And when I get to travel, I will be happy as well. But why I said that, Nicola, is because a couple of reasons. Is I wrote a book about my journey, Edge of Grace, which is available, and I'm writing a second book. But I also noticed that you have a book available. Isn't that correct?
yeah. I have two. One is just a poetry book,
Mm-hmm.
nothing but love. And the other one is gonna is searching the publisher right now. It's finished. It's called Unleash Love Unleashed: How to Rise in a World on the Edge. And
Oh, beautiful. And that's on your website, correct?
yeah, that's yeah,
Uh-huh.
that's on my website.
Good. I wanted to be sure that we got to cover that.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that.
Yeah.
When you just said about this, the rubbing up against something, seeing where you really at. When I had the spiritual center where you used to come, also was where we had family days and retreat days. And it was like, it all was happening in the center. And at the same time, I was raising my daughter. And it was like, there was this sense of like, oh my God, this is the daily life, is the spiritual life, is the holy life, and whatever happens within that is the moment of the divine kiss.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it's the challenge, and sometimes what seems like a blessing, but it is like to fall in love with life like that. It happens only can only happen when we dare to be in actual life
Mm-hmm.
with all its troubles and
Yes.
all its joys. And I think that's the root of the feminine path right there. that it's not about get just getting away, but it's
Yes,
we're here.
exactly. And there are so many things to show up for right now. I mean, life is calling all of us to show up in ways. I mean, I feel that for me. I will speak for me, but I feel myself being called to show up in ways that I never knew were possible. The generation that is here now, and you have a daughter in the younger generation, like the 25, 26. Well, I learned so much from this particular generation because they don't have the social constructs, or they've been empowered to question and challenge normative behavior. And
Yes,
so this I'm loving this challenge toward normative behavior, because I have three, and myself included, do not fit into anything so-called normative. Never going to happen. Not at all. And to be able to be open to that and not, lean into that and not hook into the social constructs whose society, culture, all the different that we've been given from dominant culture, basically, and how it has not served. And so it's such an unhinging happening. And I
yeah,
love it. I love it. I love it because we all get to be creative with new possibilities, new
yes.
ways of being and
It's
being
like
in relating together.
it's like it's breaking through the cement of ancient blocks and boulders, and the young people are the sprouts, and we get to help them to burst even more through. But also, I feel not old or young. I feel just like totally alive that we're here in this. I mean, it's the most urgent time any in all histories. Is
And it,
we're like at the edge, beyond the edge, and if we don't turn, well, yeah. And so at this moment it's like tremendous power moves through, and it's like breaking through all cement and structures.
mhm,
What we can do is like, I feel like I'm helping a lot of young people just to get this substance and the skill, and then be ignited to actually move forward towards change, social
yes,
justice,
yes,
environment. Just that spirituality is not supposed to be some dry thing,
mm-mm,
and but it is supposed to get into not just awakening, but embodiment and engagement in our world. So
mhm,
we
yes. And
really,
that's Dharma. That's what Dharma is, the activity of
yeah,
of
words
how
of the
spirit is living you. It's like the engagement, like you said, the engagement, the activity of that. But I want to say something too for the young people or for anyone, because I feel that I meet many young people because I have that generation that normally works and helps me with my daughters. But I think it's important to recognize that when you're in the process of change, of transformation, that there can be a period where everything feels heavy,
oh yeah,
dark, and there we have this terminology around called depression,
oh
and all of the fixing it of it. And I'm not saying that people shouldn't consult all the different resources you possibly can, but part of transformation is going through a period of heavy, dark, and feeling enshrouded. And that can appear like depression or whatever else you want to call it, hopelessness, all of these things. But it's a possibility also. And and everyone needs to get support when you're in that phase. But in a, I just want to encourage people that there is a light at the end of the tunnel, it is telling you, us, all of us, that that old structure is not working. The structure that you've been organized to live in as normative, the social construct, is not serving, and it is cracking down. And there may be a period of time where it feels heavy because you've been molded in a way that doesn't work. And that sense of molding can, just as it's about to lift, it can feel heavy. And then it's going to crack and crumble. And then there's a new possibility that emerges. And we're in
Yes,
that right now. We're so in
we
that.
we are in this phase of destruction. And the depression is like, it's the dark night, the global dark night. And there is the sense of, my God, I have to take medication. A lot of people are now, because this
Numbing.
is isolation, going into the numbing, calling it depression. But what if some of it is clearly depression? Yeah. So, as from a clinical perspective, some
It
of it
could
is.
be.
But a lot of it isn't. A lot of this is actually something extremely healthy, a passage of the soul that you need to go through. In my experience, that I also had to go through, it's
Yes.
the dark night of the soul. It's also the dark night of the collective, of a dying of what is not working anymore, is
Mm-mm.
finished, over. And it's like shedding skin never feels good.
Yes.
Loss of control never feels good. And
Yes.
the heaviness that you describe, that feels like, oh my God, where have I been? Yeah, these are the places we have to go through it, but you cannot do it alone. Some of the places you can't.
No, we cannot do it alone, and we have to be careful not to hold, this image of normative, like this way that normative gets held up around gender, around body, around job, career, all of these things, just like, no, no, that's not it.
I
And
mean,
this honoring of your experience and the reaching out, like this is what we're, I in the, there's the violence isn't going to do it, it's not going to, the opposition, but like that there's enough space for all of us to be here together, for there to be this coexistence, and not only here in the environment but inside our bodies, to go through that time of feeling really torn, and it's a sorting out, it's part of the dismantling, it's part of the dark night where there's this sorting out that happens, because that's your true essence, like, finding its way, and it
and
will.
she birthing, that's how we're birthing, as the feminine is birthing herself by shredding everything else. And there she comes through, and we do that in a circle. We don't do that just alone. This is the place where she shreds everything and says, okay, look in nature, how is a new sprout coming through? Well, guess what, there's over there, another plant died. And so this dying and birthing, and to look in our moment right now together, what's alive together, what's emerging that's totally fresh and alive. It's
Yes.
not a story from yesterday,
Mm-hmm.
but the history, but the living water that's flowing right now, birthing life forth.
Yeah.
Something, yeah. And for that, well, guess what? The birth doesn't happen before you die, before the death. There's always a death before that.
Yes, yes, that's for sure. Yeah, and there's the breathing, right? Now, to remember to breathe, it's not all, there is a time of pushing, but there's a lot of time of breathing.
Being.
Yeah.
Remember
Oh.
when we were birthing, before that, before the labor came on, I thought it takes forever to get big old belly before it came started moving. I felt like I'm sitting there. Every minute felt like a month almost of waiting. And
Yeah,
that's completely unexpected.
yeah.
Life just pushed through.
Well, maybe that's a really beautiful breathing point to close on, dear sister.
Yeah.
So lovely to speak with you and reconnect and run into you every now and then. And I look forward to visiting you in Portugal, because I come to Spain, and whenever you're back in this area, you're always welcome. So
Oh,
lovely.
thank you. And thank you for all the good you're pouring into this world. And especially I think it's a I I really honor you for walking with your children and doing what you're doing in a situation that is so can be so challenging, and yet you're doing such a gracious job and you're benefiting so many with that. Thank you.
Mm, mm. Thank you. Lovely, lovely, lovely.